Today is day 4 of week 4 of our Summer of No Excuses. Yesterday we focused on the intellectual stretching Moses must have experienced. Today I want you to think about the skills that he would need to do what God had called him to do. God allowed Moses to gain some experience in Pharaoh's household before he fled to Midian. That experience would help Moses know what to do and how to act 40 years later when he stood before the new Pharaoh, the powerful king of Egypt. During the years at Midian, God allowed him to gain additional experience living in the wilderness, taking care of sheep. And that would help Moses when he was dealing with some stubborn people on their long journey through the desert. But nothing in Moses' life and nothing in his experience prepared him for the totality of the task before him. He needed some skills that he just did not have. Therefore, Moses said, "I'm just not good enough." Unfortunately, Moses saw his lack as a bad thing to be avoided. However, God saw it as an essential element to ultimate success. So what about you? Do you think you're not good enough? Only those who see their own spiritual poverty can be saved by grace through faith in Jesus Christ. It is the ones who rely not on their own strength, but on God's strength, who follow the heart and will of the Father. The Apostle Paul wrote that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness, not in our strength. 2 Corinthians 12:9. Remember the history of Solomon becoming king in Israel? He told God that he felt like a child, not knowing whether to go out or come in, and he begged God to please give him an understanding heart so that he could have discernment and lead wisely. 1 Kings 3:7-9. He didn't say, "I'm just not good enough." Rather, he prayed, "Lord, please help me." When you feel God leading you toward a task that seems too big for you, don't make an excuse like Moses did. Instead, pray to God and ask for his strength and his wisdom like Solomon did, and then step up and serve God. The most talented pianist once was a beginner touching the keyboard for the very first time. You don't need all the skills in advance. You begin by simply obeying and serving God. He will lead you toward the skills to fit the task ahead. God wants to stretch you, to mature you, and grow you so that you will become more like Jesus Christ, Romans 8:29. He cannot do any of those things if you always stay within your current skill set. I had never made a video before we began this series called The Summer of No Excuses. Speaking to a camera was new to me, and editing the video was new to Benjamin. But we decided we would step up and try. And we have heard from people that this series is helping and encouraging them. It's not perfect by any means, but it can be effective because God will use it in our own lives and in the hearts and lives of others. Question number 1, what do you enjoy doing the most? If God said you had to give it up, would you hesitate? Now, to be honest with you, a few years ago, I developed some breathing troubles that got worse, and I did not want to give up my motorcycle riding. I love motorcycle riding, and then Kathy and I talked about it and realized I was starting to lose my voice because of allergies and pollens and all that. And it was a hard decision to give it up. Then when I finally made the decision I was going to give up the motorcycle and sell it, I never looked back. My only concern was, why did I wait so long? And Kathy thinks when I sold the motorcycle and paid for my hearing aids, that was a really good deal. Would you hesitate when God led you to give up something, even if you loved it? Question number 2, write down something you are really good at. Now reflect and think back to when you were first learning it. Do you remember when it was too awkward or seemed too difficult? Aren't you glad you persisted and learned that skill? I have a friend who reads and writes very well, but when she was young, she was certain that she would never develop those skills. She used to cry to her mom and say reading was just too difficult. And now she can read and write in multiple languages. We learn skills as we grow. Question number 3. Can you name a skill you have developed or improved this year? You see, you should be seeking to grow. I once heard George Barna say, scientists have come up with a name to describe those entities which are not constantly changing. That term is dead. I loved it. I know people in their 80s who are learning how to send and receive text messages to and from their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I know people from their 20s to their 90s who are trying to eat more healthfully, exercise more regularly, stretch their minds and bodies to be stronger. So here's an action step for you. Try something new this week. Neurologists who study how the brain works, how it grows, encourage us to try new things in order to build new connections and strengthen our brains. Try brushing your teeth with your other hand, or both at the same time. Try balancing on one foot while you talk on the phone. Maybe you could sit in a different spot at church. Shocking, I know. On the other hand, the key to spiritual, emotional, physical, and mental health is not newness, but growth. So don't change spouses, just work to become a better spouse. Don't change churches unless you have a very good spiritual reason to change. Just work to help your church become a place where Jesus would feel at home. Don't let the need for new skills keep you from serving God. Follow Him with your whole heart, and He will help guide you through the skills you need to develop. He's God. He already knows what you need to do. So trust and follow Him.